My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old. And if you had met me 3 years ago, you would have said I was one of the lucky women. I believe that too. I had a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood, a husband everyone admired, a successful career as an interior designer, and a little golden retriever named Charlie who greeted us every evening as if nothing bad could ever happen in our world. From the outside, our life looked perfect. People used to tell me how lucky I was to have a man like Daniel. He never forgets your birthday. He always opens the car door for you. You two still look like newlyweds. I smiled every time I heard those words. Because I believed them. Daniel wasn't loud. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't the kind of husband who filled social media with romantic posts. He simply made me feel safe. Or at least, that's what I thought. We met 8 years earlier at a friend's engagement party. I still remember the first thing he said to me. You look like someone who notices details everyone else misses. It made me laugh. No one's ever used that as a pickup line. He shrugged. I wasn't trying to impress you. That confidence caught my attention. Within a year we were inseparable. 2 years later we were married. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. It was simple. White roses. Soft music. Close family. Friends who genuinely celebrated with us. When I walked toward him, I remember thinking, this is the man I'll grow old with. If someone had whispered into my ear that day, he will be the reason you stop believing in forever, I would have laughed. Because love has a strange way of making us feel untouchable. The first few years were wonderful. Weekend road trips. Movie nights on the couch. Late-night conversations about the future. We dreamed about having children someday. Buying a lake house. Traveling across Europe after retirement. Ordinary dreams. Beautiful dreams. The kind of dreams couples build together. Looking back now, I realize something painful. Sometimes people don't stop loving you overnight. Sometimes they stop choosing you. And you don't notice until you're the only one still holding the relationship together. The first change was so small I almost ignored it. Daniel became busier. More meetings. More business dinners. More weekends at the office. His company had recently promoted him, so I wanted to be supportive. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, he'd smile. I'm doing this for us. Those 4 words became his answer to everything. Working late? For us. Business trip? For us. Missing another anniversary dinner? For us. And every time, I believed him. Because trust isn't something you question every day. It's something you naturally give to the person you love. Months passed. Slowly, our conversations became shorter. Dinner turned into silence. Our weekends disappeared. He was always distracted. Sometimes I'd be talking, and I'd notice he wasn't even listening. His eyes stayed fixed on his phone. His fingers moved across the screen with quick little smiles that never seemed meant for me. Everything okay? He'd lock the screen immediately. Just work. Always work. Funny how one word can hide an entire secret. One Friday evening I decided to surprise him. I left work early. Picked up his favorite Italian food. Bought a bottle of wine. Even stopped by the bakery that made the chocolate cake he loved. I wanted us to reconnect. To remember who we used to be. When I opened the front door, the house was completely dark. No surprise there. He had texted saying he'd be late. I placed everything on the kitchen counter. Charlie wagged his tail happily around my feet. I know, buddy, I whispered. I miss him too. I sat alone. The food became cold. The candles burned themselves out. By 11:30, Daniel finally came home. He looked tired. His tie was loose. His shirt carried the faint smell of expensive perfume. Not mine. At first I convinced myself it came from someone at work. Maybe someone hugged him goodbye. Maybe he rode in someone else's car. Maybe. Love makes us create excuses faster than facts. He kissed my forehead. I'm exhausted. I waited for you. I know. You could have called. I'm sorry. He walked upstairs without even noticing the dinner I'd prepared. I stood alone in the kitchen. Charlie quietly rested his head against my leg. It was strange. For the first time, I felt lonelier with my husband than I ever had by myself. Still, I didn't accuse him. Not once. Because I wasn't looking for proof. I was looking for reassurance. A few weeks later, we attended a charity gala hosted by his company. Everyone looked elegant. Champagne glasses sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers. Music floated softly through the ballroom. Daniel disappeared into conversations with executives. I wandered toward the dessert table. That's when a woman I'd never met smiled at me. You must be Emma. Yes. I'm Olivia. She looked slightly uncomfortable. I've heard so much about you. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. Oh. She quickly changed the subject. I work in marketing. We chatted politely. But before she walked away, she hesitated. Then quietly asked, "Can I give you some advice?" I nodded. Sometimes the people who seem happiest are hiding the biggest secrets. Before I could ask what she meant, she disappeared into the crowd. I searched the room until I found Daniel. He was laughing, standing beside a beautiful woman wearing a navy blue dress. She gently touched his arm while they talked. It wasn't inappropriate. Not really. But something inside me shifted. Call it instinct. Call it intuition. Call it the quiet voice we spend years trying to ignore. On the drive home I asked casually, "Who's the woman in the blue dress?" "Oh." He barely looked away from the road. "Claire. She seems nice. Just a colleague." Nothing unusual about the answer. Except, he answered too quickly. As though he'd already rehearsed it. That night, sleep never came. I stared at the ceiling while Daniel slept peacefully beside me. My mind replayed Olivia's words over and over. The people who seem happiest are hiding the biggest secrets. I wanted to believe she was wrong. I prayed she was wrong. Because if she wasn't, then the life I'd spent years building wasn't beginning to crack. It had already been falling apart. And I simply hadn't heard the sound. The next morning, I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking everything. Maybe Olivia's words meant nothing. Maybe Claire really was just another coworker. Maybe the perfume, the late nights, the distracted smiles, maybe they all had perfectly reasonable explanations. When you love someone deeply, your heart becomes a lawyer. It defends them even when the evidence is standing right in front of you. I made coffee for both of us. Daniel walked into the kitchen wearing the same calm smile that had once made me feel safe. He kissed my cheek. "Morning. Morning." He looked at his watch. "I've got an early meeting." Of course he did. He always had a meeting. He grabbed his coffee, his laptop bag, and headed toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned around. "You know I love you, right?" For a second, I smiled. "Yes." But after the front door closed, something about that sentence echoed differently. People don't usually remind you they love you for no reason. Sometimes they're trying to convince themselves. Life went on. Or at least, it looked like it did. I buried myself in work. My clients noticed I seemed quieter. My best friend, Sophia, noticed it immediately. She had known me since college. She could tell something was wrong just by looking at my face. One afternoon she stopped by my office carrying 2 iced coffees. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been busy." She crossed her arms. "No." I sighed. "You know I hate when you do that. When I tell the truth. When you read my mind." She smiled softly. "Talk to me." For several seconds, I stayed silent. Then everything came pouring out. The late nights. The perfume. Olivia. Claire. The distance between Daniel and me. Sophia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked only one question. "Do you trust him?" I opened my mouth to answer. But nothing came out. That silence. It answered for me. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm not saying he's doing something. But your heart is already telling you something isn't right." I looked away. I don't want to become one of those wives who checks phones and follows their husband. You shouldn't have to. Exactly. She nodded. But pretending everything is perfect won't protect you either. Those words stayed with me. A week later, something happened that I couldn't explain away. Daniel left for work earlier than usual. About an hour later, his tablet buzzed on the dining table. He had forgotten it. I wasn't trying to invade his privacy. Honestly, I planned to drive it to his office. But the screen lit up before I picked it up. A message appeared. "Claire. Last night was worth the wait. Red heart." My hands froze. Maybe it wasn't the Claire. Maybe someone else. Maybe. No. There weren't 2 Claires at his office. I stared at the screen. The message disappeared into notifications. I didn't open it. I didn't scroll. I didn't search. I simply stood there. Unable to breathe. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't arrive as an explosion. Sometimes it arrives as one sentence. One tiny sentence. Enough to destroy years of trust. Charlie walked over and nudged my hand with his nose. I looked down at him. For the first time in years. I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent tears falling onto the kitchen floor. When Daniel came home that evening, I almost confronted him. Almost. He looked tired. Asked about my day. Complimented dinner. Talked about work. Every word sounded normal. Too normal. How could someone lie so calmly? How could someone smile while another person's heart was quietly breaking? I wanted answers. But I wanted the truth even more. And I knew if I confronted him too soon, he would deny everything. The following weekend, he told me he had another business conference. 3 days. Another city. He packed carefully. Too carefully. He even bought a new shirt. I stood in our bedroom watching him fold clothes into his suitcase. "You seem excited." He laughed. "I just like being organized." I smiled back. The kind of smile women wear when they're already hurting. After he left, I sat alone for nearly an hour. Then I did something I never imagined I would do. I drove to his office. Not to spy. To verify. The receptionist smiled politely. Oh, Mr. Carter? Yes. He left yesterday. My heartbeat stopped. Yesterday? Yes. For the Chicago conference. Chicago? Daniel had told me he was going to Boston. I thanked her. Walked back to my car. Closed the door. And just sat there. No tears. No anger. Only silence. Because the worst part wasn't discovering he had lied. It was realizing. He had become comfortable lying. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. Hello? A woman's voice. Calm. Gentle. Emma? Yes. My name is Olivia. Immediately, I sat upright. I know this is strange. It is. I've been trying to decide whether to call you. My voice trembled. Why? She took a deep breath. Because I was cheated on once. I stayed silent. And I promised myself. If I ever saw another woman living the same lie, I wouldn't stay quiet. My chest tightened. She continued carefully. I've seen Daniel and Claire together. The room suddenly felt smaller. They don't even try to hide it anymore. I closed my eyes. No. I'm sorry. They tell people your marriage is basically over. Those words hurt more than I expected. Not because strangers believed them. Because Daniel had allowed them to. Olivia wasn't trying to be cruel. Her voice was full of sympathy. I thought you deserved the truth. I whispered. Thank you. After hanging up, I finally accepted something I'd been fighting for months. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't stress. My husband was living two different lives. And I was the only person who didn't know. The next morning, I looked at our wedding photo hanging in the hallway. We looked so happy. So hopeful. I walked over. Ran my fingers across the frame. Then quietly took it off the wall. Not because I hated the memory. Because I could no longer look at two people. When only one of them had meant the promises they made. That afternoon, Sophia came over. The moment she saw my face, she knew. He is, isn't he? I nodded. She hugged me tightly. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally she asked, "What are you going to do?" I wiped away my tears. I don't know. She looked directly into my eyes. Promise me one thing. What? Don't make a decision while you're drowning in pain. I frowned. What do you mean? If you confront him today, he'll lie. If you leave today, he'll make you look emotional. If you explode, he'll become the victim. Her words settled into my heart. So what should I do? She smiled. Find the truth. The whole truth. And then let the truth speak louder than your anger. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness. Not peace. Clarity. Because I realized something important. Daniel had spent months writing a false story about our marriage. He thought I would always play the role of the confused, trusting wife. He had no idea. I was about to become the author of the ending. End of part 2. Type next when you're ready, and the story will continue as Emma quietly gathers undeniable evidence, uncovers the full extent of Daniel's betrayal, and begins planning the final move that will expose everything. For the next few days, I stopped asking questions. That was the first thing that changed. I smiled when Daniel came home. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I even kissed him goodbye before he left for work. To him, nothing had changed. But inside me, everything had. I wasn't pretending because I had forgiven him. I was pretending because I needed him to believe I still trusted him. Trust had become my disguise. A strange thing happens when someone thinks you've stopped paying attention. They become careless. Daniel stopped hiding his phone as often. He left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. He answered calls in front of me instead of walking outside. He thought the danger had passed. He didn't realize the danger had only just begun. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Not yet. I wanted the truth. Every piece of it. Because if my marriage was ending, I wanted it to end with honesty. Not confusion. One Tuesday afternoon, while organizing paperwork in my home office, I received an email from our accountant. It wasn't unusual. Daniel and I had always shared financial records. The accountant had one simple question about a tax document. I opened our online financial folder to find the file. That's when I noticed something strange. There was a new savings account. I had never seen it before. At first, I assumed it belonged to Daniel's company. But when I opened the details, my heart nearly stopped. Large transfers. Every month. Thousands of dollars. Quietly moved from our joint account into another account. For almost 11 months. I stared at the screen. Again. And again. Surely there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was an investment. Maybe retirement savings. Maybe. No. The account was registered only in Daniel's name. He hadn't just been hiding another relationship. He had been hiding our money. I leaned back in my chair. The betrayal suddenly felt much larger than romance. This had been planned. Carefully. Patiently. 4 months. That evening, I called our accountant. Trying to sound calm, I asked a few harmless questions. Then I mentioned the account. Silence. I'm sorry, he finally said. I assumed you already knew. Knew what? Daniel told me you both agreed to separate some assets for future planning. I closed my eyes. I never agreed to that. The accountant immediately apologized. He had no idea. Neither did I. That night, Daniel came home carrying flowers. White lilies. My favorite. Months ago, they would have made me smile. Now. They felt like decoration placed on top of a collapsing building. He handed them to me. Thought these would brighten your day. I thanked him. Placed them in water. And wondered. Was this guilt? Or habit? Over the following week, I quietly began collecting documents. Bank statements. Property records. Insurance files. Investment accounts. Everything. Not because I wanted to destroy him. Because I refused to walk away blind. Sophia helped me organize everything. One evening, as papers covered my dining table, she looked up at me. You know. What? You're calmer than I expected. I smiled sadly. I already cried. She nodded. So what's left? The truth. And after that? I looked out the window. Peace. Then came the moment that changed everything. It happened on a rainy Thursday. Daniel had forgotten his laptop again. This time it wasn't locked. An email notification appeared. I wasn't searching. I wasn't snooping. The message appeared on the screen before me. From Claire. Subject: can't wait until it's official. My hands became cold. Against every instinct telling me to close the laptop. I opened the email. It wasn't romantic poetry. It was worse. They were discussing apartments. Vacation plans. Furniture. Their future. As if our marriage had already ended. Then I reached one sentence that completely shattered me. Claire had written. Once Emma signs everything, we can finally stop pretending. I read it 3 times. Once Emma signs everything. They weren't waiting for our marriage to end. They were planning how to benefit from it. Daniel had already told her everything. Or perhaps he had promised her everything, including the life we had built together. For nearly an hour I sat without moving. Then something unexpected happened. I stopped crying. Not because the pain disappeared. Because clarity finally replaced hope. Hope had kept me trapped. Truth finally set me free. The following morning, I met with a lawyer. I carried 2 folders. One contained financial documents. The other contained emails and records. He carefully reviewed everything. Finally, he looked at me. You've done the right thing by documenting this. I asked quietly. What happens now? He smiled gently. Now we stop reacting. We prepare. For the next month. Life became a performance. Daniel believed everything was normal. We still had dinner together. Still attended family gatherings. Still smiled in photographs. But behind the scenes, every document was being reviewed. Every account traced. Every legal step carefully planned. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was protecting my future. And there is a difference. Then fate handed me something I never expected. Daniel announced a company celebration. It'll be a big event, he said. Almost everyone will be there. He smiled. I'd love for you to come. I looked at him. I wouldn't miss it. He had no idea how true those words would become. That evening, I stood in front of my closet choosing a dress. Not for him. For myself. I chose the elegant navy dress I had almost donated months earlier. Simple. Confident. Sophia smiled when she saw me. Ready? I looked into the mirror. I think so. No. She corrected me. You've been ready for weeks. As we entered the ballroom, I immediately noticed Claire. She was laughing with several coworkers. When she saw Daniel, she smiled in a way she probably thought no one noticed. But now, I noticed everything. Daniel spent the evening greeting executives, giving speeches, shaking hands. The perfect husband. The perfect employee. The perfect man. Or so everyone believed. Then came the awards presentation. The CEO stepped onto the stage. Just before he began speaking, my lawyer quietly nodded from across the room. Everything was in place. Every document had already been submitted. Every financial transfer documented. Every false statement recorded. Daniel didn't know it yet. But the story he had carefully written for nearly a year was about to collapse.